As Ukraine's war enters its fourth year, Moscow is finding itself in an increasingly dominant position, with direct talks between Trump and Putin excluding Kyiv and battlefield momentum shifting. Russia's endgame appears within reach. Here's a report.
When Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine in 2022, many believed he had miscalculated. Experts predicted a Russian quagmire, Western unity, and Ukraine's ultimate triumph. But 3 years later, the battlefield and the geopolitical chessboard tell a different story. The long game Putin played is paying off, and for Volodymyr Zelensky, the clock has almost run out. He's hoping that there is peace, but the odds are stacked against him.
This year should be the year of the beginning of real lasting peace. Putin will not give us this peace as a gift. He will not give it in exchange for something. We must achieve peace through strength, wisdom, and unity through our cooperation with you.
Putin's primary demand from day one was to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO. Despite loud Western rhetoric, the reality is clear. Ukraine won't be joining the alliance. Donald Trump has openly stated that NATO membership for Ukraine is off the table. The diplomatic landscape has also shifted dramatically in Moscow's favor. Trump's recent engagement with Putin excluding Ukraine from peace discussions represents a seismic shift in Western unity. Trump branding Zelensky as a dictator and his suggestion that Ukraine bears responsibility for the conflict align perfectly with Russian narratives.
Now, Russia's taken over a pretty big chunk of territory, and they also have said from day one, long before President Putin, they've said they cannot have Ukraine be in NATO. They said that very strongly. I actually think that that was the thing that caused the start of the war, and Biden said it, and Zelensky said it, and I think that was one of the reasons, one of the starts of the war.
Experts say Putin never needed to occupy all of Ukraine. He only needed to ensure it remained broken and unstable. Today, Russia controls about 20% of Ukrainian territory. Trump has said that restoring Ukraine's 2021 borders is unrealistic. A fractured Ukraine is a vulnerable Ukraine, just the way Putin wants it.
The President has clearly said that we are ready to negotiate with Ukraine, Europe, and any representatives who would like to help achieve peace in good faith, but we will stop hostilities only when these negotiations produce a firm and sustainable result that suits the Russian Federation.
On the battlefield, Russian forces maintain pressure across multiple fronts, slowly but steadily gaining ground. Despite Western sanctions, Moscow has expanded military production, while Ukraine faces critical ammunition shortages.
We will continue to improve the combat capabilities of the Army and Navy and their combat readiness as an essential component of Russia's security, a guarantee of its sovereign present and future, and its progressive development.
The West's grand economic war against Russia has failed. Despite more than 24,000 sanctions, Russia's economy grew by 3.6% in 2023 and is projected to grow by 4% in 2024. Today, Ukraine is battered and bruised. A peace deal driven by the Trump administration could happen in Moscow's favor. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Mr. John Rossomando is the president of Viking Research Associates, geostrategist and expert on national security. Mr. Rossomando is now joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Rossomando, good to see you and welcome to the show. There is so much that is happening. We are talking about an imminent peace talk between President Trump and President Putin. We are also talking about Moscow propping up the 2022 peace agreement that was signed in Turkey that was never, ever acknowledged. And now we are talking about EU members or the European Union marshalling up with Ukraine, saying that Ukraine needs to be involved in the peace talks. Where does this leave Putin?
Well, Putin is clearly the one in the driver's seat here because, the West, especially President Trump, has ran on ending the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainian army has performed rather poorly over the past 2 years in battle. Soviet tactics have kept it from gaining any sort of advantage over the Russians in the battlefield. And, reality is that Zelensky has no cards to play with. He can't, retake the areas of Ukraine occupied by the Russians militarily because he just doesn't have the manpower that Putin can afford to waste.
Is there any role that China could play in the peace talks? Because as we know it, we've not mentioned China for a long time, but now President Xi Jinping had made a call to Russian President Vladimir Putin on the anniversary of the 3-year war.
Well, China has been a strong ally of the Russians in this war, providing it with economic and, to a degree, military, support. I think that, without China, the Russians would have had serious problems fighting the Western economic sanctions. However, there is a little bit of a game of global chess being played because some of President Trump's supporters think we should be working to bring Russia closer to the West and closer to the United States and away from China, despite the unswerving alliance between the two powers.
Mr. Rossomando, the EU chief and also the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer are set to meet President Donald Trump in a few days from now. Do you think President Trump will, calm down and say that maybe we set or we can't give Europe a seat at the table?
Well, there's no way that the Europeans will be at the table. The Russians don't want them. The Americans under Trump don't want them. They have no unity among themselves. The Germans have opposed any sort of real involvement, have refused to send their powerful Taurus cruise missile to the Ukrainians. You have Starmer talking about putting British troops in Ukraine. So I think that President Trump is going to probably tell him that they need to stand on the sidelines, and that will ensure that the Russians will not engage in any sort of post-war aggression against Europe.
All right, Mr. Rossomando, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for all your insights today.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.